on the new global South debt crisis. As you all know, the debt crisis is not just a big problem in Ghana, it's also a big problem in other African countries. So, I'm going to do that now.
Should we tell people a bit about the rest of the evening?
Yeah. This event is split in two parts. So the first part will involve presentations by speakers, and the second part would be a group discussion to give us a chance, to share ideas and perspectives about the book, and to come up with ideas on how best we can utilize this resource within the community, and within grassroots organizations, what's here in the UK and in Ghana.
Okay, great. And at the end, there's some really delicious food, so there's an incentive to stay. We just had a taste. Hi everyone, my name's Sarah. I work for the GB Debt Campaign. We're a UK-based charity focused on the connection between debt and poverty around the world. We do research and raise awareness about global debt issues. We campaign in solidarity with indebted people and countries, and we work with allies around the world, campaigning to tackle the power of the bank and to build a finance system that works for everybody, not just the I think it's worth saying at the beginning that we don't have a problem with debt per se. We think it can be a useful thing. It can be useful in helping people to spread the cost of things over periods of time, like if you're buying a house. The problem is that we find very much historically and now that debt is used as a tool by which the rich exploit the poor. It's a real fundamental injustice in our economy. And our work is inspired by the ancient concept of the Jubilee, which was a time in ancient times. It's in the scripts of various religions when periodically the slate would be wiped clean, land and wealth would be redistributed, slaves would be freed, and there would be an effort to create a fairer, more equal economy and society. And we believe that that kind of work, tackling the injustices of debt, is really essential in bringing about a world in which our common resources can be used for equality and dignity and fairness. We came out of the GB 2000 movement. There's quite a few people in this room who were really active in the GB 2000 movement, including colleagues from when you were involved, like 2004 maybe, or something. Yeah. I'm relatively new. I've only been working with JDC for 3.5 years, but Kofi and others really heavily involved in what was a really important movement in the 1990s and early 2000s in response to the debt crisis which affected countries across Africa, Asia and Latin America. I won't go into too much detail about why that happened, but basically there was a very unfair settlement for countries when they became independent from colonial rule. There was a lot of irresponsible lending by European and US banks to those countries, quite often to some very corrupt dictatorships which were propped up by the US government. And countries racked up really, really big debts, and were having to spend lots of money servicing those debts rather than spending public money on healthcare and education and important things. So a really big global movement came together to tackle this, called the GB 2000 movement. We came out of the UK arm of that. And it had some really big victory. So the global GB 2000 movement cancelled $130 billion worth of debt for 35 countries. So a real significant debt write-down for countries. And that had some really big immediate improvements because obviously governments had money suddenly to spend on things that mattered. So countries, including Ghana, whose I think debt was external debt was reduced by nearly 2/3 between 2003 and 2006, experienced really significant improvements in things like the number of children going to primary school, the number of women surviving from childbirth, maternal mortality, that kind of thing. So it was a really important victory, but the problem is that the movement, whilst it tackled the debt, it didn't tackle the underlying reasons why countries, particularly countries in the global south who'd experienced colonization, why they were reliant on debt for funding their government purses in the first place. So a number of what we call kind of structural problems in the global economy weren't fixed, including the fact that so many profits are taken out of countries like Ghana, other African countries, other Latin American countries by multinational corporations that are mainly based here in the UK or in the US or in other so-called rich countries. Things like tax dodging, so these same multinational corporations, but also rich elites in countries taking money out of the country, not paying their taxes, and also an unfair trade system, which means that people in countries like Ghana don't necessarily get the fair value that they should for things, for wealth that's produced in Ghana, for natural resources and for manufacturing and stuff. One minute? Yeah. And also what the movement didn't manage to do was to actually regulate the banks. So in the last century, we had a period of time, it was kind of called the Golden Age, where there were some quite strong rules on banks, on what they could do and who they could lend to. And in the 1970s, various people came to power in the US and the UK, and they lifted all those rules. And so we're in this phase now where banks can act very irresponsibly, lending to countries, and if those countries can't pay back their debts, then there are these international institutions called the World Bank and the IMF, and they loan the country the money to bail them out, and so the bank is just let off. It doesn't have to take any responsibility. So it's kind of inevitable that because these bigger problems weren't tackled, that another set of debt crises would come about because we hadn't fixed the actual root cause of the problem. And it now looks like another set of crises is around the corner. So since 2008, there's been a boom in lending to developing countries, to lower income countries. Since 2008 to 2016, loans, external debt loans to those countries have more than quadrupled. And this means that countries' debts are now skyrocketing. Countries that had their debts cancelled are now facing big increases in their debts again. And we think that it does look like another round of quite debilitating crises are on the horizon. And Ghana and Mozambique are the countries which have shown the first signs of really significant problems. So both Ghana and Mozambique went into debt crisis last year. Welcome. Sorry. So Ghana would have defaulted on its debt had it not been that the World Bank and IMF loaned money to Ghana so it could keep paying its money to other lenders. But it's in a really, really serious debt crisis, and we'll hear a bit more about that in a minute. And that's why since last year we've been working with colleagues here, including Kofi and Ankid, but also with various partners in Ghana and the same in Mozambique, to try and understand what's happened, like why are countries going back into debt crisis, but also to work to really identify the solutions and to push for solutions which are just for the people in Ghana and the people in Mozambique. So my colleague Tim, who's at the back, he visited Ghana last year. He wrote this big report, which he'll tell you about in a second. It's here. We didn't bring quite enough copies, but it's on our website if you would like the detail report. It's very technical. It has a lot of graphs. And I find it quite difficult to deal with some of that information. And so we were advised by Kofi that it would be useful if we could produce something which was more accessible. So that's the briefing that you have with you now. It's a popular education resource. We want it to helpfully explain the situation in a way which is accessible. People can talk to their families about it, and that we can have conversations to really figure out how we can stand in solidarity with colleagues and friends and family in Ghana, and how we can work together to actually tackle this crisis and hopefully push for the kind of solutions that mean that we don't find ourselves here again in 10, 15 years' time. So we're really keen to hear from you how best we can use it. Thank you.
I am now going to invite Tim. Tim is a member of the Jubilee Debt Campaign, and as she said, an intensive report was done last year, but that was condensed to make it more accessible to everyone. So based on the recommendations, Tim is going to give us more information about it and the situation of things in Ghana.
Yeah. So, as Sarah explained, between 2004 and 2006, Ghana had about 2/3 of the debt cancelled. That was a debt that was owed mainly to these international institutions, the IMF and World Bank, and other governments around the world. And following that, for a period of several years, debt payments were relatively low. But then with the global financial crisis here, following that since 2008, interest rates across the UK, Europe, the US, Japan went really low. And that meant there were lots of people in financial markets, in banks, in other kinds of financial companies that wanted to lend money to elsewhere in the world where they could get a much higher return. They could borrow a lot of money cheaply in the West, and then they could try and make a lot more money elsewhere. Another key thing in Ghana was the discovery of oil, and this led to then a boom in expectations of what the future would hold. A similar situation happened in Mozambique, and I was speaking to somebody who worked in financial markets about Mozambique, and they said they just wanted to find any way they could lend money to Mozambique because it was a hot market, that they didn't have any care about how well the money would be used. It was just a way to get access to seeing an economy that they were expecting to grow rapidly, and they wanted to make money out of that. So there was a lot of money lent and obviously borrowed by the Ghanaian government, and it's very difficult often to know how this money was spent. The World Bank, which was one of the institutions lending money, is actually one of the more transparent ones. And we looked at all the things that they'd lent money for and their own evaluations. And even their own evaluations of what they were funding said that in over 25% of cases, they had failed. It was in what they were doing. But Ghana is still paying that debt today. So there's quite a lot of this money was lent by these international speculators, banks, other kinds of companies, and at high interest rates, between 8% and 11%. Then you've got people like the World Bank lending money. China, about 10% of Ghana's debt is owed to China, another 10% is owed to Western governments. Then in 2013, the gold price fell, and this impacted on Ghana because of Ghana's three main exports to the rest of the world are gold, now oil, and cocoa. Then in 2014, the price of oil also fell. This suddenly led to this complete change in expectations about Ghana. Everyone internationally thought this was somewhere to make a lot of money, started to have second thoughts now that these prices of these exports had fallen. The CD halved in value against the dollar, as I'm sure many people are aware. And what that means with debt is that these international debts have been lent in dollars. And so if your currency halves in value against the dollar, the relative size of your debt doubles. And so suddenly Ghana's debt shot up. And then, in order to try and cope, more money was lent to try and meet these extra payments that were going out. So the debt shoots rapidly up. In the last couple of years, the amount of money being spent on debt payments that go out of Ghana is the equivalent of 30% of the Ghanaian government's revenue, which is huge. It's one of the highest in the world. I think it's probably the fourth highest of any government anywhere in the world. The IMF and World Bank started to do exactly what they'd done in the 1980s and 1990s. They lent more money to enable these payments to be made, which is paying the interest to these speculators, and so more debt goes up in Ghana. But at the same time, they say that government spending has to be cut and things like that. So over 4 years, Ghanaian government spending per person is expected to fall by 20%, which is an absolutely huge amount. We've had horrendous cuts here in the UK by the UK government, completely unjustified, but they pale in comparison to that 20% cut per person in Ghana. Meanwhile, these speculators who lent the money and paying the high interest rates, they keep getting paid the money and are making massive profits. Effectively, when they lent the money, they were taking a bet on the Ghanaian economy, and that bet, because of this fall in gold price and oil price, didn't come off. But because all this money is keeping on being lent by the IMF and World Bank, it is for them. So they now keep making these huge profits. The danger is that the same thing happens as in the 1980s and the 1990s, that this debt just becomes a huge burden that sits there for 10, 20 years, just as has now happened in Greece. And the continual government cuts just hold back the economy and prevent it from prevent investment, prevent getting out of this dependence on these three commodities and into other kinds of activity. So with the work we've been doing with ANCLID here and allies in Ghana, one of the things we've been saying is that these debts owed to these private lenders, they need to bear the cost of the reckless lending. And that is one of the steps, along with many others, that are potentially out there to help deal with the crisis.
Thank you very much for
I think it's a very, very powerful suggestion, because they need to be held accountable. They need to be responsible, because I'm going to invite our next speaker. His name is Kofi Klue. He's a member of the All African Network for International Development. He's going to be talking about the debt crisis in Ghana from the organization's perspective, and how this resource would be useful in raising awareness about these issues. Can you give him a round of applause?
For those of us who were active in the Jubilee 2000 campaign from 1995 to 2000, and have followed not just geopolitical developments in the world, but also how African countries have been relating to their own people, their resources, and the rest of the world. It is not surprising that Ghana is heading back into another debt crisis. I'm not here to elaborate on the problem. I would like to focus more on the solutions, as we, in the All African Networking Community Link for International Development, see them. All of this is happening first and foremost because for over 500 years now, African people have been robbed of sovereignty. They lack power over their own selves and their resources. The colonialism actually ensured that the face of Africa was totally changed, and African resources, instead of meeting the needs of African people, enriched Europe. Right. That was not changed very much with independence. The leaders who attempted, the leaders in the movement that attempted, like Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah and the Convention People's Party, to change that kind of relationship, were in no time overthrown because they endangered the wealth Europe was looting, out of Africa. And from 1966 onwards, we've had the kind of regimes, governments, that have allowed our country to be robbed and don't care about actually scrutinizing what is going on in the economy, let alone in any other sphere of life. So the problem is first and foremost that of simply democracy. And it is shocking that from this country, where democracy is preached, and even wars are waged to force countries to follow so-called democratic prescriptions from here, they are at they are actually responsible for the kind of governments that we have, because it was clear for Britain, for Europe, for the United States of America, they didn't want the kind of governments that's in Africa that ensured that the resources of Africa met the needs of African people. And since 1966, they've been very happy with the kind of government that we've had. So, how do the people of Ghana, and I come from that generation that grew its political teeth in Ghana in resistance to those kinds of regimes that would just allow foreigners to come and literally loot, rape, rob, do whatever, right? And we were, that fight saw some of us having to come into exile and live, lives in exile up till now. That struggle has continued. The point is this: until there is a situation whereby the democratic needs of people in Ghana and Africa are supported massively by people in this part of the world, nothing will change, right? Because the elite that is in government is allowed to run government in places like Ghana today, know that they have to allow this situation in order to profit from the peanuts that are left for them, so that they can live lives in much, much wealthier situations than the vast majority of them. That is what is happening. So the challenge is, what can we do from this part of the world to support the democratic struggles of people in Ghana and other parts of Africa that are suffering the same problem? And that is where the solutions, that during that campaign is now trying to work out, not just with us in enclave, in this country, small network of African activists in this country, but also with our people and our communities on the ground in Africa. That is key. And this meeting, those of you who come to this meeting, the question is, what can you do to help? Right? There are some suggestions here that are quite good. We've discussed, we've agreed that these are the colleagues in Ghana, that these are possibilities here. But how do we actualize those proposals? First and foremost, we need to establish again a campaign that will raise the fact that debt is serving the purposes of the enslavement of African people today. Because our people work so hard, we have riches that don't benefit us, right? And we have governments that have absolutely no respect for human life in Africa, right? We have a government that has appointed 110 ministers, the largest in the world today, as the country is sinking federally. And they're going to borrow, and they will be lent this money largely to pay ministers to live in comfort at the expense of the majority of people. How do you stop that? You can stop that if voices of people of conscience in this part of the world actually impress upon Britain not to be promoting these crimes against people in Africa. And that is where the voices of African people and our allies in this part of the world becomes extremely important. We need to organize ourselves. In fact, it is my view, having lived in this country for so long and seeing what is going in Ghana, I believe that the African diaspora, those of us who are Africans who live in this part of the world, don't have an understanding of the strength that we have. Because if we were to exercise our strength in, first of all, amplifying the voices of the poor masses of our people in Africa and holding governments here accountable and ensuring that they do not fund the crimes that our governments are committing against our own people, our governments in Africa will have a lot more respect for us here. Because they cannot get away with the crimes they are committing, because we will be exposing them here and holding governments here accountable. So these accountability mechanisms are what we need to pay attention to developing each and every voice that sounds here in support of the struggles that are being waged for democracy in Africa, true democracy, not the one of just every 4 years going to cast ballots for criminals, literally. That is the kind of thing that we have to do. There is a proposal from our colleagues in Ghana to organize local action learning concourses on debt and development, which is to go into schools, go into churches, go into mosques, go into communities, and educate people on debt and development, right? That is something that needs support from here, and this resource is part of supporting people here as well as in Ghana, and Africa to understand the problem, because our people are kept in absolute ignorance about what is going on, right? The few rich people who ensure their children go to the best schools and come here to learn these dirty ways of mismanaging our resources, they are ensuring that their children walk into these comfortable positions in government and the poor remain ignorant. So if this information can get to the poor and support them to hold, first of all, it's simple. Ensure that they do not allow people to touch their local resources. If each and every community does not allow anybody to touch their resources without them knowing what it is about, they decide this game will stop, right? And that is really what, go to Accra now and see. The indigenous population of Accra literally is being chased out of Accra, right? By people who come into government, sign away lands, that is, and the people in Accra can't do anything about it. Why can't we support them, right? To take control of their resources and ensure that they are not robbed of it. This is the kind of thing that we have to be doing there. There are people who come from Africa who come here into universities and they are taught things very different from the realities on the ground. So these are some of the things that we would like you to do. One of the most important suggestions in support of the efforts in Ghana that we would like us to consider is to ensure that we support a Ghana-UK civil society international dialogue on debt and development. If annually, civil society activists interested in the debt issue here can meet with their counterparts in Ghana and discuss the debt issue openly in Ghana, right? And draw plans whereby, civil society activists in Britain and civil society activists in Ghana collectively hold governments accountable, right? Yeah. That will change the law, right? Because, we are in a situation where the security also matters. A lot of the activists working on that are terrorized, they are intimidated, they are harassed. And if there is a stronger relationship between activists here and those in Ghana and their organizations, there is a lot that will change. But yeah, I know I'm going over time. But this is something that we really have to discuss in terms of how we can actualize this. Otherwise, all these proposals will not amount to anything. There are people in Ghana, despite all the odds, who are determined to fight this battle till the end. And if only we can support them, we can amplify their voices, and we can be, on their side, they will win this battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kofi. I really love all the points you made, but there's one particular one that I would like to talk a little bit about. When you said the civil society here in Britain should have a platform whereby the civil society back in Africa can have a dialogue. Yes. From my experience as a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. I saw all these things firsthand. I saw poverty. I lived in a country whereby you see, a pregnant woman, she cannot have a baby, in a hospital because she can't fund it. You see women dying. It's very hard for you to find things like that here. You understand? I saw this firsthand. You understand? And just a few years ago, the one governor in Nigeria, I can't pronounce it because it's from another tribe. I can't pronounce it, Ayash something. He was caught here in the UK. He embezzled millions of pounds. Yet Nigeria is still heavily dependent on debt. Embezzled millions of pounds, and even the money that was confiscated from him was not returned back to Nigeria. So this is a big problem. It's not just, you know, a Ghanaian problem. It's an African problem as a whole. I'm not going to waste too much of your time. I'm going to invite the next speaker. Her name is Esther Stanford. She's the co-founder of PACO, the Pan-African Reparations Coalition in Europe. She's going to be talking on reparations. Can we give her a round of applause?
Greetings. Okay, first thing, I'd just like to thank the Jubilee Debt Campaign for inviting me to speak today. I know I don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to share some perspectives on how some of us who are reparationists within the International Social Movement for African Reparations view this question of debt bondage in Ghana and in fact across Africa. This issue of debt bondage is just one of the manifestations of the Maangamizi. Maangamizi is a Kiswahili word meaning African Holocaust and of chattel, colonial and neo-colonial forms of enslavement. So you see the banner here of the Stop the Maangamizi, We Charge Genocide, Ecocide campaign, and there are different manifestations, and as Kofi has rightly said, this is not a recent problem. It's an old problem that has contemporary manifestations, and it seems to be an intergenerational problem, because we have not in this time, as activists, as people of good conscience, as various social and political movements, been able to stop the current phase of this Maangamizi, and I humbly suggest that that is our historic mission and duty in this time. Now, this question of debt bondage, which Kofi defines as the systematic enslavement of a people using debt traps and other means, is really impacting on African people, not just at home, but actually those of us who are abroad, those of us who are Africans in the diaspora, who are also being dispossessed of our heritage, of our homeland, of our right to belong, and of our right to benefit in community with the rest of our kith and kin back home from the rich resources of our mother continent. And contrary to popular belief, Africa is actually a net creditor to the world. It is not a debtor in the way that this aid trap goes, and this whole question of indebtedness. So we need to do a lot to change public perceptions about the reality that it is Africa that is actually funding and fueling a lot of so-called development that happens outside of Africa. So I really wanted to highlight this quote that's in this great publication from Madame Matro Dedoazu. And the last bit that she says in her quote on page 5 is, "We are dying slowly." And this is a quote that actually describes the modern day manifestations of the killing of our people. That's not just about dropping bombs and wars and proxy wars. It is about the slow killing, the genocide that is impacting our people through the imposition of mechanisms such as debt and dispossession and the whole push and pull factors of migration. And that is actually a cause of reparatory justice. So when many of us are organizing for reparatory justice, which is really about repairing ourselves, repairing the very structures of inequality that Sarah mentioned at the beginning about the successes of the Jubilee Debt Campaign movement, but also some of the weaknesses or the failures in that there wasn't yet, or there has not yet been, that movement that has been able to tackle fundamentally and reform those very structures that keep on producing these cycles of dispossession and oppression. And we in the reparations movement therefore talk about the need for us to bring about systemic global change. Systemic global change socio-economically, politically, in all the very systems that govern human life and in fact our life and interaction with the rest of nature and the cosmos. So that is really the cause of reparatory justice in terms of making holistic repairs. I just wanted to highlight a couple of landmarks just to give you a sense of historicity in terms of the activism that we as reparationists have been engaged in actually making these links between the issues that affected us, who had been dispossessed, centuries, especially linking with those that came out of Africa as a result of struggles against neo-colonialism and misrulership in Africa. And I'll just go back to, 1993 with the Abuja conference that took place in Nigeria, the first conference on reparations for chattel enslavement, colonialism, neo-colonialism, that was sponsored by the Organization of African Unity. That was then followed up with the initiation of an organization movement here called the Africa Reparations Movement, led by the late Bernie Grant MP, Dorothy Kuya, Linda Bellos, Kofi Mawuli-Klu, and many, many others. And then Kofi has spoken about the Jubilee Debt Campaign, in particular the Jubilee 2000 Africa campaign that also championed this issue of tackling debt bondage. And where I come in my own activism is with the Black Quest for Justice campaign, when in 2003 we launched a legal and extra-legal action that put this issue of debt bondage as tackling debt bondage in terms of debt repudiation, and that we should repudiate these debts because they do not exist, within a lawsuit. And that now continues in the historic Stop the Mangamizi, We Child Genocide, Ecocide campaign. So there's a long history, a lot of wealth, a lot of knowledge that we've gained as a result of our resistance. The final thing I would say is that it's really important for us to link with our people on the ground, and as Kofi has said, to amplify those movements in resistance. The resistance was not just all 200 years ago. It wasn't just in the Haitian Revolution. That resistance is happening now, and we need to do more to educate ourselves, the rest of this country, and the rest of the world about the contemporary realities of the masses of our peoples. And I would just finally urge you to ensure that reparatory justice, in a holistic sense, in terms of restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, guarantees of non-repetition, and where necessary compensation, runs throughout everything that we do in actually trying to resolve the challenges of debt bondage today for Africans in Ghana as part of the wider struggle to effect and secure Pan-African reparations for global justice. Thank you.
I'm now going to call out Mr. Alex Akuma. He's from Cote d'Ivoire, and he's a member of the All African Networking Group in International Development. Mr. Akuma is going to be talking about the relevance of the debt crisis within the French-speaking African countries and the connection it has to the life and work of Thomas Sankara.
Right, okay. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Because you have said something very important, and in every struggle or in every movement, we, the diaspora, have a role to play. I can just take you one small example. When we moved from Ivory Coast, we were involved in student movement. And when we came to London, we decided we, people from Ivory Coast, need to have a voice. So we organized our campaign, and between 94 to 99, things changed in Ivory Coast. When we started, people were just laughing at us because we're nobody. We came as students, and they believed that we cannot change anything. But we managed to get into the political system. When we were in the British Parliament in '94 to discuss about political situation in Ivory Coast. and we had an early day motion signed by hundreds of MPs. 99, the government in Africa was overthrown. Now, coming back to the debt issue, and I want to touch on the French-speaking African area and highlight how this is a problem planned centuries back. As you're all aware, Africa was divided into different parts according to the rulers from Europe. Now, the French were occupied by the Germans during the war, and Africans have to come to fight for France to be liberated. Now, during the German occupation, the Germans had a system by which they collect resources from the French. And before 1960, the French looked at how they can use that system to be able to continue to exploit the African countries who use French as the first language. And then the French set up the financing system, and they created a currency, and they convinced those leaders from the different African states speaking French that it would be better for you guys, who are in new countries, to use the same currency, which is called the French CFA, which is in fact a currency owned by France, yeah? A currency manufactured in France, okay? And because all these 16 countries need to use this currency, the gold reserve have to be deposited in France, okay? Now, every single year, all these 15 countries using this franc have to put 50% of their GDP in the French coffer. And this is since 1960. There were only one leader of Guinea, Conakry, who saw this as a trap, Sékou Touré. And he said he cannot belong to that French community because he preferred to be free in his poor world rather than being with a rich person and he still be enslaved. So Sékou Touré break the link with the French system, but the French authority tried to marginalize him. They described him as you can imagine. They painted him as the worst dictator. But Sékou Touré rules, and today Guinea is in a better shape than many other countries. Now, by controlling, because currency is your sovereignty. Look at yourself as a person. If your wages is managed by somebody else, you can't go out buy what you want. You have to go to that person. Oh, I need to buy shoes today, and he will give you £1. I need to buy makeup today, and he will give. And this is what is happening now in the French-speaking African countries. Now, what these leaders have done, those who are claiming power in various African-speaking countries and French-speaking African countries, they have tried, yeah? But as soon as France realized that you from X country are trying, they will make sure they get rid of you. Let me just give you a few examples. Most of these first leaders served in the French political system. So they were not citizens from Ivory Coast or Senegal or Togo or Niger or Burkina Faso. They were first of all citizens of France, representing France in both different countries. If I take the case of Ivory Coast, Houphouët-Boigny was the first leader. He was a French citizen. He served in French cabinet. Yeah? Government. He was in the French government from the 50s. Now in the 60s, before they made him as president, he made sure that France has a military base in Ivory Coast, Abidjan. So technically, security is managed by France. The resources are controlled by France. And as a result, you are just there doing what you are told to do. And this is the same scenario in all the other 15 other countries. Few leaders were eliminated because they tried to change the things. The first one was Sylvanus Olympio from Togo. He wanted to break up with the system. He was killed 2 days before he launched his own currency. The most popular one was Sankara. He came to power in 1983. Within 4 years, Sankara managed to change the conceptions of Africans, and he made it clear at the UN, at the EU summit in Addis Ababa in the summer 97 that we cannot pay, we Africans cannot pay this debt. We need to speak with one voice, that we cannot pay this debt, and this debt has to be cancelled because we did not take any debt. How many centuries have there been looting our resources? Sankara finished this speech in October, he was killed. It's just to show you how brutal the French system is. I'm just going to take another example. In Ivory Coast, the system was the same until 2000 when Laurent Gbagbo was elected. When Gbagbo came into the office, he looked at the issue and he called Chirac, who was the French president. He said these things which were agreed in the 50s, 60s are no longer relevant today. Now, before Gbagbo came to office, the IMF, the World Bank have cut link with the regime because they were looting the resources. Now, Gbagbo came with a new approach. He said he needs to set up a system of local government and make sure that each region will have people elected to be able to address development issues. Okay? And if you look at the book by the brother Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, you will understand that development is a step-by-step process. Look at health, education, infrastructure, and this way we build our own land. Gbagbo was in office for 1 year. Within 1 year, the system of management they put in place seduced the IMF and the World Bank because they had put a roadmap of work to see how they're going to manage the country. They had a system of secured budget, meaning that Ivory Coast will live by its own means. Gbagbo refused to go to get loan from anyone else. He told his government, we need to get resources, our own resources to feed our people. And he used people graduated from Ivorian universities, Professor Bongo Abre and Professor Mamadou Koulibaly. And they managed the economy without borrowing a penny. Furthermore, the previous loan borrowed by the previous government, within a year and a half, Gbagbo reimbursed all the loans. Now, France saw Gbagbo as a threat because what he was doing, if it's copied by the other countries, what will happen? They will all cut link like Gbagbo was doing. They organized a rebellion. Gbagbo was in Italy on the 18th of September 2002. The military coup took place in Ivory Coast. That military coup was prepared in a neighboring country, Burkina Faso. And luckily, Gbagbo, the military managed to chase the rebels, but the crisis demonstrated that France was not ready to stop Ivory Coast taking away what were benefiting from our resources. So in 2010, election was organized and Gbagbo was declared the winner according to Ivorian constitutions. But France just used the military power they had and they removed Gbagbo from office militarily. Gbagbo is in The Hague. Just to finish this discussion, we Africans have the work to do. We have these financial institutions trying to keep us in bondage. And if you take the IMF, you take the World Bank, let me just give you 2 examples. In the 90s, the IMF had a structural plan in the third world countries. None of the plan was successful. In Argentina in 1999, the Argentina economy collapsed. You can go on Google, you can search, and you can see. The Minister of Finance of Argentina called people from Argentina and they sat down and they put in a plan to address the economic situation. They arranged a meeting, they went to IMF in Washington, they told them, your plan is not useful for us. Argentina today is one of the most powerful countries, between the 20 biggest economies in the world. So we, as a people, we have a role to play. We have international institutions trying to keep us in bondage. We have a financial institution like IMF and the World Bank. We have the UN, which is the military hand of the international community. And the UN, as you all know, is the most undemocratic organization on earth. And whatever they do, whether in Ivory Coast, in Haiti, no one can punish them. And they carry on committing atrocities, they carry on committing crimes, they carry on committing whatever they want to commit. Now, with the new generation, as I said earlier before I started, we need to get together because people are starting to understand the mass in Africa now, especially with the internet, with the technology now, we can change things. And the French system now, the French franc now, because the campaign started this year and is bearing fruit already. So thank you very much, and together we can be successful. Thank you.
Sorry to rush you at the end, but we wanted to have some time for people to talk to each other, because we really want to make this a space where we can gather ideas about what we can do, about how we can use the resource, what we can do together to actually try and tackle this. So we were thinking that if it's okay with people, we could break into smaller groups, maybe turn around to the people next to you, groups of like 4 or 5, ideally someone you don't know, and we'll talk for like 10 minutes or so and just share your thoughts on what we've talked about, on what's happening with Ghana's debt, but also critically what you think you and we can do together and with the people outside of this room to actually try and tackle this. And then there'll be some space at the end for people who want to share with the full group. We're not going to go on too late, but definitely even time for food as well. Okay.
We would want to, I think we need to educate the people, upcoming youth, so they should know of the sufferings that we've suffered. When I was a boy, there was, what do you call it, this bauxite. We don't just have gold, we have bauxite and manganese. And 24/7, the trains, 50 coaches every night, throughout the night till morning, it's just running and we don't know where they are going. And nobody even accounts for them. They've taken all. We even have some sand that they use for glasses, for doing glass. Mm-hmm. The German government came to do, Kwame Nkrumah built a glass factory for us, which the government was using. Nobody knows about it. The youth now, they don't even know. He tried to build a gold refinery because our gold were being refined in Europe. So when they go and refine it, they come and tell you the quantity that you have. We don't know the quantity. They just pack them all the way to going with a train. The train will be taking it, and then they go and refine it and say there was too much sand in it. So they took the sand. So that's what they account for. You see, they've cheated us too much that we have to learn to live and live on our own. So we have to educate our people. I think this is what we came about with. We need to educate our people so we could get people to support whatever we want to do to make our people rich, to make ourselves rich, and the country rich. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
If somebody to have something.
Yeah, it's the same group anyway, but the question is about the when Kofi was talking, the political dimension is what is quite very important in the education, because it looks as if, because of development, we have gone through certain stages, post-ideology, the end of history, which has taken us completely from the classics of understanding how these things continue to come up. Because Ghana was one of the people that deaths were cancelled for. How did it come about? I mean, by 31st December, when it is claimed a revolution was launched, the rhetoric that came about it, grassroots organizations, which we even talk about year over year as part of the education. What came out finally was that the IMF and World Bank came in to wage the revolution on behalf of the grassroots. But it didn't just happen, because we still have a clientele of people who are interested in that sort of revolution. So when the Structural Adjustment Program came up, after 10 years of prosecution, I mean, any African over here will agree that Ghana was being shown as the success story people of Africa, which everybody should copy. So the question about the education is that you ask yourself, if it is even forgetting about ideology, history, or anything, let's put it to common sense. How can you be successful? Then the next stage is to move into highly indebted poverty country initiatives. Still from the IMF and World Bank. After 10 years, that same referee, that same linesman, that same match commissioner have judged you as a success story, and other African countries should follow up to copy you. The next stage was for you to move into highly indebted poverty country initiative, meaning the more loans is that the program actually wasn't successful because it cannot finance the next stage of the development. And these are the areas where the education becomes quite very, very, very important, that basic common sense, because a clientele is prepared to gain from it. He won't allow you to even use common sense that you are rejecting highly indebted poverty country initiative, which was advanced to the Kufuor government to implement. So the question of education is like the guns we are going to take, a new form of education.
Thank you. So education is really important. Do people have ideas about how? So do we need more events? How can we get this resource out to more people? Did you have any other ideas or thoughts that came up? Maybe someone from this group here?
Well, I think it's very easy nowadays to communicate through social media because it spreads out so quick and everyone, or majority, has access to it, easy access as well, which I think would be a good way of spreading out the word. Right?
We also said youth as well. If you can connect to the young ones early, they're most likely to sort of understand and be in a position where they would express themselves and how they feel about these sort of things, and they come together very quickly when they're sort of in agreement about something. So that would be an avenue.
Right. Thank you. Great. Yes.
Yeah, there's lots of youth-level young professional organisations that I think you should tap into. They do a lot of events like Project 57. There's the Youth of Ghana, Future of Ghana, and there's also the Ahaspora group, which are a collective of Ghanaians who have gone back to Ghana, but they've got a network which they do forums. Like they're doing one today actually regarding an incident that happened in Ghana. So yeah, definitely connecting with those youth organisations and going to as many events as possible.
Amazing, thank you. So hang on, Project 57,
Future of Ghana and Ahaspora.
How do you spell that?
AHA.
Yeah.
SPHOIA or something like that. Meaning that, what does it mean? We are here.
We're
so
here.
Ghanaians are here. Yeah. Diaspora are back, basically.
Great. Thank you, that's really helpful. And just, sorry, actually coming back to the social media question, so what's the best way for us to do that? So we have a Facebook group. Does Anko have a Facebook group? you don't have a Twitter account. We were talking about this before.
We're still relying a lot on its constituent groups.
Yeah.
Who have all these things.
Yeah, right.
But, I mean, we have been trying not to kind of bury the identities of the constituent groups. So, but we'll get it.
Sure.
My only thing about the social media, you see, it's very easy for people here to talk about social media. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people like you in Ghana don't have access. Right? So it is actually the children of the elite who don't care two hoots about what happens to the country because their parents were stealing, right? Who communicate in social media and they don't care about these things, right? A lot of, I'm not running down the young people, but a lot of the professional groups are very much into what the IMF is doing so that they will be part of it rather than get into the grassroots. So I think dialogue is important because when you have the poor young people in Ghana, talking to their counterparts here, you see a totally different kind of exchanges than what happens what young people use social media for. Because a lot of elitist Ghanaian young people are using social media, but they're not discussing the actual problems that affect the vast majority of the people. They are discussing things that they see in what? Ebony and Ford and that is what
I think there's a lot of access, not only from people from the elite. I think a lot of the younger people, regardless of what level they're at, have access to smartphones nowadays, from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So I think that you can probably exercise better your voice here to get the young people here that care to tell their family or other people back home as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true.
Thank you. Okay, so a couple more hands. I think you and two here. Yes.
Yeah. For me, I would suggest like a common project because each country, each African country have the same problem. I would suggest like common project in order to create this network that we are talking about social media, if it's available or not. Yeah. It will be available with this network and with these people through this common project.
Yeah, absolutely right. So this is an earlier publication that we put out last year, which was looking specifically at Africa as a continent and the UK's role of the UK banks in exploiting not just Ghana but other countries in Africa. So I think that's really helpful, something for us to build on. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to echo the fact that education is key and using places where a lot of people congregate naturally as a resource, like churches, universities, especially students that are studying international development and humanitarian studies as well. Linking in with charities that are doing educational work with children as well, because that's where they're actually on the ground, and maybe they can seek through programs working with people that are on the ground, especially children, because I think there's a huge issue with confidence and self-esteem as well, and a lot of how the Western world reflects on and visualize Africa is actually taken in to themselves as well. They see themselves the way the Western depicts them, and they have to learn for themselves, actually, we don't have to look at ourselves like that, and that's only going to be through education that can be achieved. Yeah, I was going to say that it just linked to the point about education and mobilisation and reparations that I'm really concerned with. On the 1st of August, we have an annual reparations march that takes place from Brixton to Parliament. And it would be good to have like a delegation of some of you who are involved with this campaign around raising awareness of Ghana's debt bondage. because that's an educational march, you know, bringing the placards and the banners and then engaging with other campaigners who are bringing their own issues. Some are domestic issues to the UK, but we have blocks on that march. We have an Allies block, we have a Global African Family block, we have people that come to participate in the march from around the world who all bring and physically display, if you like, their reparation struggles. So that's a very good way of educating people about the link between this history and how this history is impacting on our present.
Thank you. What's the date again?
1st of August.
1st of August, great.
Yeah.
Do that. Yes.
Okay, I have a suggestion that's a bit different, but it's around education as well. So I had a suggestion on education, but potentially there's a lot of talk around the banks and the institutions in London lending irresponsibly.
Yeah.
And how about if, like, the Jubilee Debt Campaign did some discussions with the graduates at these companies and at these firms, because then generations might understand more where that money's going, because they might just see an opportunity to invest, and they might not know necessarily the implications that had. They just see a margin of 8%. They invest in it. But if they knew actually the repercussions of that, then if the younger generations coming up knew that, then they might not invest in those things. So, yeah, they might feel more responsible, rather than, because they might not be educated themselves as well. So I don't know if that's, because they understand the consequences, they might sort of try to change the opinions of their seniors.
Oh, thank you.
I think the passion and people are fed into the conversation, and it would be very interesting to have, I mean, social media is good, but people need to be in charge of organizing or coordinating the activities, because you can send information on Twitter, people read, and what happened next, you see. So locally, people need to have responsibility in different towns, in different communities, so that if, for instance, from London there's an information sent, these people on the ground can call on the community and then send and share information, maybe feedback on them, so that they know what is happening or what event will be happening, and then the message will be widely spread. Because you can send a message on Twitter or whatever, and what happens next?
I think it's more about making people know about these events, like we promoted this on social media, and that's why people are here. So yeah, so thank you. And I think you had a point?
Yeah. The other thing I want to add is that we should also try to make links with the unions. Because if we make links with the union, we can spread, there are unions here, there are unions in Ghana too, whereby we can also educate them on where we are today, about the debt bondage, so that people could understand why there's immigration, the reason why people are fleeing from some of these places here too.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm going to hand back to Yemi in a minute to wrap up, but maybe just to wrap up from our side at Jubilee Debt Campaign, there's some really great concrete suggestions there. It would be great if people have further concrete ideas, like who should we follow on Facebook, or particularly which youth group or which church would be particularly good to contact. That would be incredibly helpful. Our website is on the briefing, I think, but I can give my email address to anyone who has any ideas. It'd be great if you could follow up and get in touch, or if you could follow us on Facebook and message us your ideas. And then the other thing, from our point of view, I mean, I think probably we're not going to get very far in tackling this if it's just JDC and ANCLID, and we really want to be a resource for people who do things. So if you want to organise an event about this, we would really like to support it, and we can, help advise on the logistics of events. We might have a little bit of resources to put in if you need to hire a room. We don't have loads of money, but we definitely have a bit, and this is a really big priority for us. So really, we very much want to help other people, help you to make stuff happen around this. So if you have concrete ideas about things that can be done, then please definitely get in contact with us, and we'd really like to try and make it happen. Things that are more targeted. So, there's lots of famous Ghanaian British celebrities. We did a bit of a research on them. There's loads of rappers and stuff. We were thinking, we're not sure that if they would respond to a request from us, but maybe that's a way to kind of talk to young people. And if people want to do that, we really want to support you and help make that happen. So, thanks.
Yeah, I think that there are some ideas that have to be kind of more elaborated upon, because, for example, young people here who want to listen to them, who want to help amplify their voices here. So, as much as students can study these things in lectures and so on, it would be good if practically, through organizations like NUS Black Students Campaign, they are able to connect with, these efforts that young people and students are making, in their communities where the real issues are in Ghana. So any young person who is here who wants to connect with young people, your counterparts in Ghana, in schools, colleges, universities, we want to, hear from you and connect you, because that's really what the issue is. And again, this meeting of civil society groups here as well as in Ghana is also very, very important, and we need to sit down and discuss, the practicalities of that. Niabe is here and he's been a bit modest, but we've been discussing things about his cultural group, Ablade, helping to popularize, these issues through, music, and that's quite a very popular thing within the Ghanaian community here as well as at home. Music, actually does carry very, very powerful messages, and if you look at the records, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire particularly, a lot of political messages come through, music. So we should explore that with Niabe and others. Then Yemi herself, we're discussing how you use churches for these purpose. There are lots of Africans here are Christians, they're Muslims, and they're having to find ways and means of working with churches. Mosque on this issue is very important. We did a lot of that during the Jubilee 2000 times, and I think that particularly CAFOD, Christian Aid, TF Fund, that's work with you, should come on board. Set all free, something that we could actually, work around in this. But lastly, a very important thing, you see, we can run around, we can march, we can demonstrate and so on. If this does not impact on decision making here in Britain, right, it would amount to zero. So parliamentary lobbying is a very, very important thing that we should get our communities to work with you to do. We should find MPs, MEPs, well, Britain is getting out of the European Union. But I think that, MPs and also those in the assemblies in Wales, Scotland, so, but it's important we take it to that level. Otherwise, you can have people running around chasing their tails and marching and demonstrating, and it doesn't mean a thing. But we have to have a situation where we are challenging the British government and its representatives, not to encourage this reckless lending, and also take it easily when you have a government that borrows to go and pay, 110 ministers, right? These are some of the things we have to do. And if we can have a situation where we hold our MPs to account here, and through that, people in Ghana will learn to hold their MPs to account, then change will happen. So that for me is the most important level of engagement.
Thank you. So I think we're going to wrap up, so there's enough time for food. We're just going to hand back to Yemi just to close and tell you how we can stay in touch and next steps.
Okay. Thank you very much for your participation, your contribution, feedback. We really appreciate it. So we've come to the end of today's event, and we value your ideas. So if you have further suggestions, we'd really appreciate it. You can send us an email. Yeah, I wish you a safe trip back home. I don't want you to leave without, taking some food. Try to hang around, network, chat with each other. Yeah, stay blessed. God bless you. Thank you.